we're going to be talking about managing difficult workplace behaviours, and sociopathy is a part of it. I always want to not overemphasize sociopathy because it is rare. 1 in 100 males in the workplace and 1 in 200 females in the workplace qualify for that badge, if you like. So it is rare. However, there are many other behaviours that are similar and mimic and may make you think you're dealing with a sociopath, when in fact you may well be dealing with someone with another type of problem, or is simply stressed or having a bad day. So to begin with, I think it's important for us to understand the origins of our behaviour. Where does that all come from? But before we even do that, let's have a look at the agenda for today so you know what we're doing. We're looking at the causes of difficult workplace behaviours. We're going to be identifying the different types. We'll spend a bit of time on the sociopathic behaviours and why they're different, the impact of difficult behaviours, which is all of them, effective strategies to address difficult behaviours, and the question, can difficult behaviours be changed or fixed? What's leadership's role in managing and prevention? And I'd like to introduce the trace protection process, which I advocate everyone learns how to use in the workplace to protect themselves and make sure action is taken. So,
sorry, David, before you go, I forgot to just mention to people, if anybody has any questions that they want to ask David, please put them in the chat. I've got my eyes on the chat, and so I'll be asking them throughout the session. Thanks, David.
Perfect, and feel free to interrupt any time, no sweat. So the causes, what are the causes of difficult workplace behaviours? And so you all know, in fact, that there are genetic contributions and environmental factors. So behaviour can be inherited. And the conditions of the child in the womb, if the parents or the mother was particularly stressed, there is a potential for at least ADHD to arise in the child. And they interplay with one another. Now, all of us have good programs built into us and dysfunctional programs built into us, don't we? We've all got the shadow side. And the truth of the matter is that most of us learn how to cope with them, try and improve them, and try and overcome them. But there's a percentage of the population that is not skilled enough or doesn't know or doesn't have the awareness to deal with those issues, and they arise always at the wrong time. And the worst of them fall into the hands of the mental health authorities or the justice system. But in the workplace, all of us can be triggered, can't we? And it's really about whether you can manage that trigger. But beyond genetics and beyond the environment, there are 3 primary root causes for current behaviour. That is the impact of fear, which we all possess, which we don't need anymore because truly there's nothing to fear, except we don't believe that. Then there's the power of our habits, and not the good ones. I mean, the habit of breathing is a good one, but the habit of losing your temper in a particular manner is not a good one. Then we have the consequences of ignorance, and none of us know everything. Do we have enough knowledge to know how to deal with our own bad habits? These are the cause of everything that goes wrong in the workplace. Every safety incident, every conflict, every mistake, every misunderstanding is caused by fear, habits, and ignorance, any one or all of them. And I'd like you to reflect on that for a moment and just see if you can prove me wrong. in any situation. And you'll find that one or more of those three things were present. Now, the beauty of that is that we know that there are remedies. And that means that we need to embrace courage in the face of fear. And that in terms of bad habits, we need better practice for improvement. And in terms of ignorance, we need to continue learning forever. And nowadays, we need to be learning all the time. The organisation contributes to difficult behaviour as well, with unclear roles. How many of us are still not 100% clear about our role? How many of us have conflicting ideas about our role compared to our fellow workers' role? How many of us are suffering poor leadership? And particularly today, who's feeling that they're in a high pressure environment where you're being asked to do more with less, where you actually know we need more people, where you actually know we need to start saying no. We need to say we're not right-sized. What are we going to let go in order to do this? All of these contribute. The workplace culture has a role on that as well. The culture determines the behaviour of the team pretty much, and the team determines the nature of the culture. So they interact. I'd like you to think about a negative aspect of the culture that you're in right now. And think about what does that make you feel? What does it make you do? And how have you seen other people respond to the negative aspects of our culture? Then I'd like you to look at the positive aspects of your culture, because the culture is not all bad. There will be good spots and there will be negative spots. Have a look at the positive aspects of your culture. What are they? And how does that help you to be the best version of yourself? And what can you do to help that culture stay positive or become more positive? Let's have a look at the different types of workplace behaviours. And most of you will recognise these. And look, let's be really honest. Let's look in the mirror and know that some of them are our behaviours too. Open aggression, absolute conflict. No, not going to do that. No, I don't agree with you. That kind of heated emotional response. Then we have the passive aggressiveness, which seems to be very common in the workplace, where we don't signal our disagreement, we just don't do as we probably have agreed to do. And nowadays we're seeing a huge amount of resistance to change, and the anger and the frustration that goes along with that. We are actually quite good at change, except when it's forced on us. We like changing at our own pace. Everyone changes in their own way, but the organisation often requires us to change now, this way, and immediately. And that's not realistic, is it? When we have these behaviours, we need to be looking for those behaviours that are repeated, the ones that keep popping up. And if they're popping up in the same person all the time, we now have an issue that we need to watch more closely. Look for any escalation in the intensity of those behaviours. Be very aware of the negative impact that has on the team, because it does. And never forget the value of early intervention. Too often in workplaces, people leave things until they're too late. And in fact, I'll give you a very good example. In one government department, this particular person had been there for 30 years, and for at least 20 of those years, this person had been a problem, and no one ever dealt with it. This person was, by the way, 6'7", very overbearing, and most people had given him the label of being a psychopath. In fact, he wasn't. He was, in fact, a narcissist, and the attention was about him. And he also had a bit of a borderline personality disorder, which meant that rather than harming others, he'd be harming himself. But no one knew how to deal with him. The leadership wasn't able to or wasn't interested, and team members simply avoided him. And in the end, it became one particular person new to the team said, I'm not putting up with that, and made a complaint. And only then was that person dealt with. And I came in and worked with him. And in the end, I encouraged the department to pay him out, let him go. And it was a commercial decision that was made, but it was for the benefit of the whole department. And he went. And he went properly, ethically, and rapidly. Let's have a look at sociopathic behaviours in the workplace. Now, this is rare, as I said, one in 100 males and 1 in 200 females. And you will know it when you see it. There's a massive lack of empathy, or it looks like it's fake. They lie with impunity and easily. They are really, really good at blaming others. It's always out there. They manipulate. They will use you. They are predators. They want control. They want domination. And that's why we see 1 in 5 in the senior leadership role has sociopathic traits. Bear in mind, it is a spectrum. Doesn't mean to say they're full-blown sociopaths. They just have elements that sometimes get them promoted. And they're really good at superficial charm. Now, there are a total of 12 items on the psychopathy checklist. There is an article that I've written which covers all of that and more. And Franca will be sending you that article at the end of this workshop. I do encourage you to study it, and bear in mind that I'm saying be very cautious. You can get it wrong. I have been in a room with several other profilers, and we were all trained, and we were tested to see whether we could identify the lineup of sociopaths or potential sociopaths. None of us got it right. None of us got it right. You will only know when they've done something really significant on the sociopathic scale.
Just going to pause for a second. Someone had their hand up. Did someone want to ask a question? If you did, please just come off mute and you can ask it now. No? Okay. That's all right. Sorry, keep going, David.
No, that's fine. No problems at all. So just bear in mind, I'll give you, and I'll tell you what can actually happen. So a few years ago, the HR leader of a department, it happened to be another government area, of a department contacted me and said they had an executive director who they had a litany of complaints against, and they really need to do something about it. So I interviewed, but he is open to coaching. And so I said, okay. And it took me 3 coaching sessions with this person to realize that he was too far on the spectrum, and that any further coaching would only give him more skills that he could use to manipulate. He lied within the first 10 seconds of me being there. he kept lying. And the fourth session that we were due to have, he did not turn up and gave me no prior warning. I realised at that point that he'd shown me enough. So he was removed, and not sacked, by the way. He was removed, had all people reporting to him were taken away from him, and he was given a special projects type job. Now, within 3 months, that same HR person rang me and said, "David, I've got another one." I said, "Okay." I said, what's happened? And she said, "Well, there's been every one of us, he's only been in the department for a short period of time, but already everyone in his team has made complaints about him." I said, "So what have you done so far?" "Well, I've removed all the people from him, and he's now working through another person I've put in charge of that team, because he is a subject matter expert. And we do need him, but we don't need him with the people because he's a sociopath." I said, well, hang on a tick. Has he agreed to do any coaching? He said, yes. She said, yes. I said, okay, well, let's not brand him just yet. Let's be a little bit more circumspect about this. And so I coached this particular person, and it was very clear to me that no way was he a sociopath. He simply was a command and control person who did not feel safe being vulnerable. And so he protected himself by dictating what he wanted from the team. The team, by the way, were people who'd been in the role for a very long time. And when I interviewed the current leader said these people do not really want to work. So there was a clash there. That person that I coached really simply got some skills in behaviour, became a very good leader, had a different team, and the team really flourished. So be careful. It's easy to lay labels on people, but it can be very damaging. So any questions? Any more questions? Anyone want to share anything at the moment?
David, okay. There's a question here from Michelle Bastian saying, "Hi, David, is there any evidence that workplace sociopaths can genuinely change their behaviour, or is removal usually the only option?"
Really good question. Currently, to date, there is no evidence of a sociopath improving. They will take any attempts to help them as further tools to their toolkit for manipulation. That is the current state. However, I'm not totally convinced that that is necessarily locked in concrete. I personally haven't had any sociopath improve, largely because once I recognise them, I won't go any deeper. I'll just help them to leave. However, bear this in mind, the brain is plastic and our neural pathways can change, but it requires our willingness to accept the changes and our willingness to do the work. The sociopath is less likely to want to do that because they believe in the way they are. Mm-hmm. They believe that what they're doing is correct, and they think everyone else is the problem, not them. So it's very difficult to change the sociopath for that reason. And yes, they do need to leave the organisation.
Yeah. Jodie, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, just on that note too, David, trying to spot the difference between sociopathic traits and narcissistic traits in the workplace. How do you kind of define where and what level you're actually dealing with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Bear in mind that the narcissist is looking for admiration. They're looking for grandiosity and approval. They absolutely cannot handle rejection. The sociopath doesn't need approval. They're predation. They want control. And they handle rejection quite well. They just move on to the next target. Bearing in mind they don't have the emotional depth. Now, the narcissist has heaps of emotion, but it's all about themselves.
That's a nice distinction in terms of understanding it. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to have any questions before David keeps talking? Okay, thanks, David.
Okay. So, what can you observe at work to distinguish sociopathy from other difficult behaviours? And I do say be cautious here. It's so easy to label. And when we get fresh information like you might be getting today, it's really tempting to apply it. And of course, we then have confirmation bias type stuff going on. We need to be very mindful, be very, very cautious. What you can observe at work are patterns of behaviour over time. The person manipulates, the person dominates, the person builds a relationship with a weaker person and then uses that person. They have very selfish, goal-directed manipulation tendencies. There's no remorse. If they've hurt someone and someone's made a complaint, they'll shrug it off and say, well, that's their problem, not mine. They are immune to rule making. So we in teams make agreements about how we behave with one another, how we can call each other out if we need to, all those sorts of rules. The sociopath is immune to any of that. They have their own set of rules. They are very tolerant of punishment and sanctions. They don't care. They're oblivious. When they were younger, punishment never worked. They had a massive tolerance for pain. And watch out for the collateral impact on the team. You will notice productivity will go, absenteeism will increase, and talent will leave. The main thing is to don't try and diagnose, simply observe and put down what you see. Look at the facts, look at the actions, look at the time, the date, the frequency, and get help. Create a relationship with HR if you're not in HR already, and escalate the matter. Any questions around that?
Just David, the observation I have based on what you said is that, and so often in workplaces, people say, yeah, I think they're a sociopath. And we kind of can sometimes throw the term around very loosely to mean anybody who's got nasty or mean behaviours.
Yeah.
And I think what you're trying to make clear to us is there's a distinction between an actual diagnosis, which we are not qualified to make, but we can observe some behaviours like the ones that you've been explaining to us that should, particularly if we're a leader or in HR, make us concerned to then, as you said, go and get some professional assistance, go and get someone who is qualified and discerning in that space to make that assessment. So the stuff you're telling us is really to alert our attention, but to not diagnose.
Yeah, don't diagnose because you're actually not qualified to do so. Look, I'm even though I've been working with criminal psychopaths and then workplace psychopaths for over 50 years, which ages me, I know, I'm sorry about that. But I will still consult a forensic psychologist if I think I'm going to go to court.
Yep.
All right. So
yeah.
It is difficult. I've been in a situation where one forensic psychologist said this person is a sociopath, and another forensic psychologist said, no, he's not. So we need to
and that's
be
why
very
it's good to be
mindful.
cautious.
We need to
Carrie,
be
did
very
you have a
mindful.
question?
Yes. Hi, David. Nice to see you again.
Hi, who's that?
Carrie from
Carrie, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I guess my question is about bullies in the workplace and how as an HR practitioner can we differentiate between a workplace bully and a sociopath? Are there any differences that would separate the two?
Yeah, look, bullies are people who are normally defending themselves, and attack is the best form of defense. And they may also be people who they have themselves been bullied. Most bullies have been bullied at home.
Yeah.
Normally by the father, but not always. And the reality is that they have made a judgment about the person they're bullying, and they may be seeking to have that person removed, or they want that person to improve.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is totally unacceptable, as you know.
Yeah.
And there is a need to have a very confronting and necessary conversation with the bully, and look for any other signs. One of the first things that person will do will show a lack of remorse. If they do show a lack of remorse, and if it continues, and if there is no noticeable emotion coming out of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Then I'd worry.
Yeah.
But most of the time they have made a judgment about the person they're bullying.
Okay.
So you need to get up close there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, David.
I guess, David, that's another reason why it's so important that people in authority actually action someone's inappropriate behavior sooner rather than later, because when you're looking and you're making an assessment about how they respond, some of those responses help you go, all right, I think we can work with this and they will change their behaviors. But if you go back to your list up on the screen, if their response is no remorse, imposing a sanction doesn't seem to stop their behavior, they don't seem to care about rules, then you're starting to collect some other information to suggest that you managing it by having a chat with them isn't going to be effective.
That's right. That is exactly right. The other thing, that other caution I'd put in there, they may not be a sociopath, but they may be angling for ultimately in a harassment situation. So think about that.
What do you mean by that, David? Can you explain a bit more?
Yeah, so they may be setting up for some claim.
Okay.
Workplace harassment, workplace behaviour type stuff. And
right. Okay.
That is now on the increase.
Yeah. So you're talking about a potential claim, I don't feel psychologically safe, or this is a psychosocial hazard, or
correct.
Yep. So okay. So using the system to make a claim.
Yes, they'll behave in ways that deserve correction.
Yeah.
And then claim harassment and bullying.
And then claim you've bullied me by how you dealt with it or how you spoke to me, or okay.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think some of the people in the room who work in HR can probably say, yep, I've seen that happen. I know that I have as well. Yep, and that's why following your process, taking good notes is such an important part of how you manage those conversations.
Yes, and we'll come to that. It's very simple, but not easy to deal with this sort of stuff. It's simple, but not easy. If I can put that conflict in there.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, we'll let you keep going and tell us more.
Okay, so I'll give you another instance, and this is one that came about because of you, Franca. So I worked with a particular authority that their particular outfit, I won't go into full identification detail, their particular outfit was the worst performer in their particular space. And there was a particular member of the staff who was causing people to leave go on stress leave or leave the organisation altogether. And I was called in, and within the first 15 minutes of being with that person, I got a massive load of lies, zero acknowledgement of any situation, and I could clearly see that this person was on the spectrum noticeably. I didn't know whether she was a full-blown, it was a female obviously, a full-blown sociopath, but certainly enough to be of concern. The person was removed from that site and put under very close supervision by a very senior member. And within 3 months she resigned, and within another 3 months had gained a executive role somewhere else. Within another 3 months of her being in that role was made redundant as the only way they could get her out. And since that time, I believe she's unemployable. The organisation that where I found her, I then coached the members of that team, and they then became the highest performers in their space. So the impact of one person, and that person, by the way, was in middle management and therefore had a massive exposure to all the other people in the organisation. So the damage is significant, the impact is high, and the ability to bounce back is also high once that person is removed. So please do not tolerate it. Okay.
I might just add, I know the client, obviously, that David's talking about because I referred him to them. And so I can verify that story in terms of the positive impact that has happened in that team as a consequence of that person no longer working there. So I often hear people say to me, particularly in government agencies, you don't understand, Franca, it's impossible to get rid of anybody. And my response is, I do understand. It is not impossible to get rid of people. But I do find that David is the person that I refer people to when they want to go down that pathway, because he's got such a well-trod pathway of doing it appropriately, ethically, very measured, so that you're not going to be worrying down the track that things unravel.
Yeah, it's crucial. And as I said before, it is actually simple, but it's not easy. And you do have to pay attention to detail. And unfortunately, it is time consuming for both HR and the person's immediate supervisor. And really one of the big things is getting the evidence from the people most affected, and they are not the supervisor and they're not HR, they're the team members. And they're often very reluctant to give you the evidence that you need. And so there's many ways of actually overcoming that, and I can help in that space. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual impact of these difficult behaviours, whether they be just narcissism or stress-related problems or borderline personality issues, or even the autism spectrum can actually create some kind of behaviours which people will mislabel. So be mindful of that. Be mindful that we're all very stressed these days. Well, I'm not, but most people seem to be. And that does cause behavioural problems. Bear in mind that there are bipolar issues as well, and there are substance abuse issues as well. So think about all of those things in the mix that cause these difficult behaviours, but look at the impact of them. So in the team, there's an erosion of trust. Now, trust is a big issue, isn't it, in the workplace today? We have a loss of trust in our leadership. We have a loss of trust in our government. We have a loss of trust in institutions. What happens when we've got somebody in the team that we now don't trust? It just makes life miserable. And my question to you, are you working to earn trust? Are you showing consistency of care, competence, courage, and clarity? The 5 C's of trust. Consistency of care, courage, competence, and clarity. That's how we keep trust. Now, the behaviours that we're seeing that cause trust to erode are the opposite to that. A lack of consistency, a lack of care, a lack of courage, a lack of competency, and a lack of clarity. Think about the level of stress when you've got a badly behaving member of the team. And think about how the team's motivation and productivity takes a dive. I don't know whether you're aware of it, but the Productivity Commission has been in the news lately because Australia's productivity has gone down even further. And my question is, are they paying attention to the level of stress and behaviour issues that are contributing to the productivity, or are they simply looking for more tools like AI, automation, and systems and processes to overcome it? I personally think the biggest problem is our behaviour and the stresses that we all suffer at the moment. The influence on the workplace culture and retention. If you've got a toxic environment, you will have a poor workplace culture and you will have high employee turnover. And it's really hard to find good people today because really good people are being looked after and they're staying where they are. The consequences to the organisation will be reputational damage. You'll lose stakeholder trust, and that is not just the people in the business, but the suppliers, the clients, the customers, and the financiers. They will all be less inclined to support the organisation if we've got a culture that's been caused because we are tolerating unacceptable behaviour. Now, most commercial organisations deal with this a lot quicker than government does. So I'll just signal to those of you who might be in government to please do not let the rotten apple stay there for too long without attempting to improve or remove. Nowadays, people are doing a lot of homework before they move to an organisation, and you will find it difficult to attract talent if your organisational culture is not right. So bear that in mind. Okay, what about how we deal with it? How do we deal with these difficult behaviours? And one of the most important companies that you need to go to for that is EEO specialists. They have a whole toolkit and a whole range of skills that they can help you with to deal with this in the first place, prevent it in the first place. So please pay attention to these people. They are wonderful. But communication and conflict resolution skills are a must. The more we are able to communicate effectively, the more we know how to deal with conflict in a way that is respectful, ethical, effective, and rapid, the better. We learn how to de-escalate the tension. We learn how to promote understanding of one another, and we can facilitate change, not just behaviour change, but systemic change. We can facilitate it even better. with those communication and conflict resolution skills. There's a habit in the corporate world, government and commercial, to talk about setting expectations. And I'd like that word expectations to be banished. I would like us instead to spend a little bit more time making agreements. Because setting expectations often sounds like it's a one-way thing coming down from above. And we do have leaders that do that. No, they need to have a conversation and create an agreement where all parties contribute and we come up with an agreement that we can now all honour because we all made it. And we need to be making those agreements around boundaries and behaviours. We need to define what is acceptable and what's not. We need to agree beforehand on what are the consequences of breaches. And we need to encourage, through our own behaviour, respectful environments. Any questions before I move to the next slide? Okay. Can difficult behaviours be changed or fixed? And that is always the question we must end up asking. And I do believe in sustainable behaviour change. And there is a process that I use for it. First of all, we do a deep profile for individual insights. And the profile that I use measures behaviour and communication styles, your internal drivers, and your emotional intelligence, and where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, where are the opportunities, and where are the threats. And we use that to customize the goal setting and the planning for that person to identify what is the best version of that individual. What is the best version of you? And then we coach and practice for that. Now, timing is always an issue. The timelines can vary from 18 days to 12 months, and sometimes longer, depending on the degree of difficulty and the nature and the person themselves. But think about this, what we're actually doing when we are asking anyone to make any change, regardless of whether it's a behaviour change or a systems change or a change of routine, we are asking them to change their neural pathways. So as a coach, when I'm working with a client, I know that the fundamental thing that I'm doing is helping that person to rearrange the layout of their neural pathway, to let those that are strong that need to diminish be unused, and to build new neural pathways. Now, depending on the individual, that can happen rather quickly, or it'll take time, and it's an individual by individual basis. But 18 days to 12 months is what you can look for sustainable behaviour change. So it is a wide range. Did I see a hand go up there somewhere? I saw something shift on my screen. Any questions there?
It's just a really lovely observation from Carrie, which, I kind of second it, where she says she loves the idea of creating an agreement and defining acceptable behaviours. It's much more impactful as it then outlines both parties have to commit to honour it. And that's her takeaway. And I think, and there's other people that are agreeing. So yeah, I love that as well. As a lawyer who quite likes agreements, so I really like the distinction between an expectation, which is usually one-sided, versus an agreement, which is both coming together and mutually. So that was a takeaway from Carrie, and it looks like perhaps others as well.
Yeah, and look, the proof is always in the testing of it. So when we've made an agreement, as a leader, I can come to the team member who's perhaps broken the agreement, and I could say, John, we made an agreement to do this, didn't we? And John will say yes. So it seems to me, and I'm not sure, but it looks to me like you're not honouring that agreement at the moment. Can you help me understand if that's the case or not? Now that's a whole different approach to, hey,
Yeah.
I expect you to be here now.
Yeah.
That's a whole different approach.
Yeah, it's completely different.
And so really what I'm asking people to do, leaders in particular, is to stop being a boss, instead be an elite coach. Okie doke. We need to recognize that there are limitations to what we can do internally. And so you need to be very aware, particularly now with the litigation, the laws that have changed and tightened up and become more, I guess, demanding of the organisation, putting more responsibility on the organisation to act. Recognise when you need to get external expertise, whether that be somebody like me, somebody like Franca, or a lawyer, or a mental health expert. Recognise it and do not waste time wondering, go and do it. Get it done. This, to me, is one of the most important components. How many of you here are already leaders? Indicate in the chat, just so that I've got a, or so that I can be told by Franca. Looks like a few.
So yeah, there's a few. And I would say anybody who's in HR or heading up HR, you're considered for the same reason. You're a role model for accountable, appropriate behaviour. So
100%, absolutely.
Mm.
The easiest and the best way for the leader to prevent those behaviours is to lead by example and model the behaviour that you want from others. And I would encourage you to think about adopting the value of unconditional respect. Regardless of anyone else's behaviour, you will be respectful. You can be assertive, you can be strong, you can be very much the effective leader whilst remaining respectful. And indeed, one of the tests that I have for my clients is that they are able to deal with unacceptable behaviour and performance respectfully, and they find that there's a rapid result of improvement. The other issue is about accountability. If you let something slide, if you walk past something that should be corrected, you are saying, yes, it's okay. People are looking at you and taking your lead. That's why I call it a leader.
Mm.
And if you let something slide, that's given them permission to let it slide or actually do it.
Dave, if I might just add in what I notice in our experience, we've worked with more than 100 organisations now for more than 16 years. And the ones where I think our training is most effective is where we have buy-in from the leadership or the executive team.
Yes.
And you just, because then what happens is they are making sure they're role modeling appropriate behavior. They're also holding people to account when that behavior is not okay. And so you just see all of the great training that we do is getting implemented and activated and used. So, and I often say to people, if you haven't got buy-in from your leadership, you're probably wasting your money using us. You need to get buy-in from your leadership.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. And with my commercial clients, if I don't work with the CEO and the CEO's direct reports first, I won't work.
Mm-hmm.
I won't work with the organisation.
Yeah.
No point.
Yeah.
Wasted their time, wasted their money, wasted my time.
Mm.
it's really important that you develop policies and a supportive environment. I find that most policies are not explicit enough. There are motherhood statements that show they've got the right intention, but they need to get really specific and define behaviours. And of course, they all come from the values, don't they? And of course, we see a problem in the first place when we've got values that are on the wall but not being lived in the business or the organisation. And policies that aren't clear on the one hand, or policies that do exist but aren't enforced or modelled by the leadership, you may as well throw them in the bin.
Yeah. I might just add at this point, for anybody who is concerned about their policies related to unlawful behaviours or complaint management, because I got sick of reading really bad policies for such a long time. We have 3, or we're about to release our 3rd one. So we've got one related to managing unlawful behaviours, one related to what constitutes unlawful and inappropriate behaviours, and we're just about to launch a new one on underperformance management. So if anybody is concerned that their policies and procedures are not clear or not up to date, you can shoot me or Claire an email and we'll have a chat with you.
Right. I think it's also important that if you do have all those policies and you know that they've been tweaked and they're now right, make sure that the resources that support the understanding of those policies are well and truly deployed throughout the business. I mean, there are too often you might have policies that no one knows about, except for those people handling those particular policies. So make sure that the resources are there to ensure that the whole of the company is educated about the policies, and make sure that your management around the implementation and policy enforcement, if you like, is consistent. Again, think about litigation. Think about what happens if you have sloppy management or inconsistent management, how that will weaken your case and strengthen the complainant's case. Training. Training is so crucial, and training is one of the most underrated areas in the workplace and often gets the least amount of attention. But train and empower your managers to recognise difficult behaviours, how to address them, how to have the conversations to explore or to nip them in the bud. I'd like to introduce you to what I call the trace protection process, and this is for everyone, regardless of whether you are in a leadership position, HR, or just a member of the team. Remember trace. So track the patterns that are occurring that you're worried about. Make sure it's something that you've actually seen, not heard about, and not just one incident of it. Something that's happening too often. Record it. This is the key. Record it. Dates, times, the words, the impact, anything that you can remember about the situation. These are facts that will protect you. If you don't make the notes, you won't have the evidence, and it won't be. Memory is fallible, don't forget. In the first instance, as soon as you can, assert your boundaries. You can simply say very clearly to the person, that is not acceptable to me. And do it when you're calm, and be very clear and remain respectful. There's a lot of power in being calm, clear, and respectful. There's much less power if you're excited, emotive, angry. It just weakens your point. As soon as you feel that you you've got a pattern, you've done what you can, consult early with HR or your manager. Don't wait. And there's an Australian issue about not dobbing people in. Well, hang on. This is about protecting yourself. This is about protecting your team.
Mm.
And look, if the worst comes to the worst, go, exit. There's no shame in leaving something that you can't improve and that is not safe for you or not up to your standards. You can withdraw. Have no shame in leaving. I've never known a person yet who's chosen to leave an organisation for whatever reason who hasn't been able to find something even better. In fact, that goes to good people who've been made redundant for cost-cutting reasons or whatever, have always landed on their feet. It might have taken some time, but they've always landed on their feet. So if it's untenable, go. So think about trace protection process. It's actually in my article that you'll be getting after this. Any questions so far?
I think, David, we've just gone past the 2 o'clock mark. So I'm mindful about people probably needing to head to meetings or anything like that. So if you want to do a wrap up, that would be great.
Okay, so I'd wrap up by saying I think you should buy the book Proof of Vipers. The link is also in my article, written by David Christie, who is an HR expert. I wrote the foreword. I have no financial interest in the book, and I think the book's about $7 on Amazon. It is very useful for helping you to minimise the impact of bullies and toxic workplaces. So to conclude, awareness and empathy is really important. Be empathetic. Use structures like TRACE and really start building and working towards a healthier workplace environment. And that is thank you.